I'm Carol Spieckerman, and this is Spieckerman Speaks Retail, presented by MarketScale. Hey, it's Carol, and welcome to episode 14 of Spieckerman Speaks Retail. Retailers are no longer just places that sell stuff, and that means that suppliers can't afford to act like companies that just sell stuff to retailers. Retailers have quickly evolved into becoming more like those lean, agile technology platforms that they've been modeling their businesses after, partnering with, and increasingly acquiring. And these platforms now tie together new formats, partnerships, acquisitions, content, big data, and so much more. So I help companies perfect their platform positioning so that you can take advantage of retailers' new openness to platform partnerships. I mean, retailers know they can't do everything themselves anymore, nor do they want to. They're counting on you to help make it happen. So with that in mind, we're on the final mistake in my series, 8 Mistakes Suppliers Can't Make. Now, if you're tuning in for the first time, we've been doing a deep dive into the problems that come up time and time again in your retail B2B positioning and sales situations. And this is true whether you sell products, services, or solutions in the retail space. Everything that we talk about parlays to other B2B selling situations. As I like to say, once you nail retail, you're good to go. So we're going to kick off today by taking on our 8th and final supplier mistake. And as we wrap up, I'm going to share some thoughts on some recent retail developments in the lead up to the holiday shopping season. And we're going to continue to do that through the end of the year so that we can track those changes and also what they mean to your strategy. But I have a question for you. What do Walmart's just announced tech services launch, Amazon's fresh grocery store debut, and Dollar General's new pop shelf store format all have in common? Well, they all happened recently, and they all exemplified the new rule that's going to drive retail growth going forward. Diversify or die. Diversification is the growth engine of retail's future. So mistake number 8 is to narrow your options. And this is true wherever you play in retail. Diversification is the name of the game. So let's dig into what's driving it and what you should be doing about it. Now, on the retailer side, diversification is taking 2 primary forms. First of all, business model diversification. This is when retailers launch solutions and services, for example. We just talked about Walmart's tech launch, where they're going to be doing a Geek Squad-like service where there's going to be repairs and assembly and that type of thing, very much in line with this business model diversification. Also, retailers partnering with one another, like Kohl's taking in Amazon's returns. And in the UK, Asda just now announcing that they're going to be partnering with another retailer called The Entertainer, the toy retailer, in order to amp up Asda's category diversification during the make-or-break holiday season. The second primary diversification driver for retailers is format diversification. If you hadn't noticed, just about every retailer out there is now a multi-format operator, even ones that before were defined by a single format. You have former big box retailers like Walmart operating small, medium, and large formats and under different brand banners. Target opening urban and college stores. Dollar General testing urban formats also, and just now, concepts that are targeted to higher income shoppers. But this push toward diversification is getting left out of the equation, and worse, it's getting left out of supplier strategies. Now, this is understandable because channel shifts and COVID are taking center stage right now, but it's leaving opportunities on the table if you're not focusing on diversification. So diversification is driving retailers' platform expansion, and that means that suppliers need to stay on top of how retailers are diversifying and look at ways to harness it. Here's some examples. Now, one of my clients provides in-store solutions to retailers, and business model diversification has literally saved their business. Well, more accurately, platform positioning saved their business because that's what made them aware of how their retail and brand partners are diversifying in the first place. But before we worked together, their business was very literal. They provide in-store services, therefore they were just trying to sell those services to retailers that had lots of stores. Fair enough, right? That's a logical equation. But it's not a winning formula when retailers are closing stores and in some cases disappearing altogether. After our platform positioning training, they started paying closer attention to how their customers and prospects are diversifying. One of their customers, for example, had just formed a partnership with another retailer. Next thing you know, not only were they supporting the in-store services for that partnership, but they were able to hop over and grab that partner retailer as a second customer. Now, if they hadn't started tracking these dynamics and these diversification plays, none of that would have happened. And they've gone on to parlay this strategy a couple more times where they're leveraging retailers' diversification to drive their own diversification. This really is the name of the game, and it's a huge opportunity going forward. Another retail client started doubling down on that multi-format opportunity and promoting their ability to execute brand programs just from that perspective. Even though most retailers are now multi-format operators, not all of them operate those formats seamlessly across their enterprise. So it can be like working with separate retailers and even having to compete for business with each of them individually. So what my client did was they developed a deliberate, thoughtful strategy that was a multi-format plan. It was initially geared toward addressing the unique characteristics of stores, not just small, medium, and large assortments, but developing a comprehensive merchandising concept that addressed all the unique attributes of the stores within the main format that this retailer operated. This was an intentional first step, and it really paid off, because their attention to detail and their ongoing resistance to that one-size-fits-all thinking got the attention of some folks who work across their multi-format initiatives. So my client was able to not only roll out programs to more stores within the main format, but also to expand into the other banners that retailer operates. The numbers just kept increasing and expanding. As their customer expanded and diversified, my client was able to expand and diversify right alongside them. That really is the name of the game. Multi-format has become a real calling card for this company, and it works because they're positioning to their customers' platforms, but of course they're also delivering on the promise of being a true multi-format expert. They are really walking the talk. So this is just a couple of examples of how platform positioning and diversification work hand in hand to drive big business. Let's take a dip into the dark side, how a lack of diversification within supplier companies can cause some real problems and be an obstacle to your growth. First of all, lack of diversification in distribution is a dirty little secret for so many suppliers. They're too reliant on one or two or three customers, and some of those customers could even be called competitors because retailers are building brands and solutions in-house. Unless companies make diversification in their distribution a top priority, it'll just continue to get pushed back until it becomes an emergency. Like when one of those big fish customer relationships is suddenly at risk, or a customer's deprioritizing your categories, or just pulling the rug out from under you entirely. But the good news is, business model diversification can save the day. Now, one company that I work with had that exact problem. They started to see their business spiral downward as their top customer not only created brands that were competing against them, but also started deprioritizing the top categories that my client sells. After a bit of strategic research, my client identified several potential prospects that were based not on how many stores they had, but on their prospects' brand profiles. One global e-commerce platform really bubbled to the top and emerged as an awesome opportunity for them because this platform happens to limit the number of brands that sell on their platform, and they also don't market their own brands. It's just not part of their business model. So my client's platform positioning shift hinged on setting new criteria for what really mattered and mitigating the real problem that they were having, which turned out to be brand competition. Now they're able to stand out and do more business with customers, even ones that are technically smaller in scale than their original partner. They're not getting lost in that sea of sameness, and there's so many examples of this. My clients that have diverse brand portfolios, for example, have been able to meet their customers where they are through licensing, direct-to-retail programs, and even creating private brands. The fact is, no two of their customers are taking the same approach to branding, but that's cool because they do such a great job of flexing to these different models and, again, meeting their customers where they are. Companies that provide in-store services can parlay their merchandising, fixturing, signage, and other capabilities into these new business models that retailers are branching out into. Things like health clinics and other services that they're attaching onto their platforms. One company has become a specialist in helping digitally native brands as they expand into new business models, like opening their own stores. And this has become a real growth driver for them. They're seen as a resource to these companies that don't necessarily know a lot about operating retail stores, but they go to my client and they say, hey, we know that you know how this needs to look, and they help them ramp up these stores in record time. So diversification takes on so many forms, and it presents so many opportunities. The first step is to do a diversification deep dive on your existing customers. Look at how they're expanding their platforms and diversifying, and how you can plug your platform into those opportunities. You need to take a look at the possibility that their diversification may be putting you at risk. It's so much better to know this ahead of the game and plan for it rather than to be taken by surprise or to stay in denial. Is your lack of diversification compromising your growth? And how can you remedy that? Should you be forging partnerships, maybe even partnerships with your competitors? Now, the next step is to apply the same scrutiny to your prospect list and to look at ways to reframe your case studies. So many suppliers frame their successes in terms of solving problems. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but can you tell a diversification story as well? I found that so many companies have happy accidents buried in their case studies. Their customers took them somewhere they never thought they could go, and it helped them grow their business. These are usually the diversification stories. What happens is, a lot of times these suppliers tend to diminish these stories. Please don't make that mistake. Know that if you did it, you can own it, and it doesn't matter how you got there. Look at ways that you can do it again and again, and how you can weave that into your diversification journey and your diversification story. You'll be so glad that you did, and it'll really resonate with your retail partners. So let's switch over to how the holiday shopping season is shaping up, and particularly in terms of duration. Now, this is something I've been talking to the media about over and over the last couple of weeks, how this holiday season is definitely starting to drag out. I think it's a good thing, because retailers are wisely trying to take the heat down to avoid those mad rushes to the stores that could be so unmanageable during the COVID crisis. Two big developments have kicked things into gear. Amazon basically redefined the starting line for holiday when it scooted its Prime Day sales event to last week. Now, when Prime Day was in July, Amazon pretty much had the surge all to itself, and holiday was an entirely separate season. Well, now, not only has Amazon fired the starting gun early, but Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Kohl's, and JCPenney all jumped into the fray with their own versions on or near the same days as Prime Day. This should ease the logistical logjam a bit, but it's also going to give retailers and suppliers an early read on the holidays. Now, as a retail watcher, I think all of that's great news. As a shopper, though, I'm expecting a major case of holiday fatigue to set in at around Thanksgiving. But hey, you gotta pay to play. So we've wrapped up our 8 mistakes retail suppliers can't make. You can check out the entire series on marketscale.com or on my site at spieckermanretail.com. Contact me directly at carol@spieckermanretail.com to get help with your platform positioning and virtual events, or just to share ideas and ask questions. We're going to return to our regularly scheduled programming in our next episode, so please stay tuned. I've got some great interviews and insights in store, and thank you for listening in today. See you next time, and happy selling.